If we don't send our kids to college, then what do we do with them? What if your child doesn't go to college? Then what? Hannah Maruyama of Degree Free joins me to explore real options for homeschool families who are choosing a different path. Welcome back to the Homeschool with Moxie podcast. I'm your host, Abby Banks, and this is episode 332. You can find the show notes at 4onemore.com/332. Today, we're tackling a question that comes up again and again for homeschool parents, and that is, if we don't send our kids to college, then what do we do with them? To help us unpack this, I'm joined by Hannah Maruyama, founder of Degree Free and host of the Degree Free podcast. Hannah is passionate about helping families and kids, young adults, through this process as they see what opportunities are available to them outside the traditional college route. So in this conversation, we'll talk about practical alternatives to a four-year degree, how parents can prepare their kids for meaningful work in life, and what it looks like to build a future without relying on the college system. So some of you are already committed to a degree-free path, and you will love this episode. And some of you are just beginning to question the college default, and so you will love this episode as well. This episode will give you clarity and a lot of encouragement and plenty of fresh ideas. Hannah really knows what she's talking about, and I thoroughly enjoy this conversation. So tune in, enjoy. Here's my conversation with Hannah Maruyama of Degree Free. Okay. Welcome to the Homeschool with Moxie podcast, Hannah. Good to have you.
Thank you so much for having me on, Abby. I've been looking forward to this for a couple weeks. I've been I'm prepared. I'm ready. We're going to have some serious discussions today.
Yes, this topic is very relevant for homeschool families because we want to know what other options are out there besides college and how do we help our kids become successful in whatever they choose to do. But let's start with your personal journey because I'm sure there's a story behind it. Why are you passionate about this topic?
Well, as your listeners, if they're familiar with Degree Free and what we do, then they're probably not surprised to learn that I was homeschooled for a decent period of my K through 12 experience. And so essentially what happened was I had an OG homeschool mom. And I say that because there is definitely a difference between the new wave of homeschoolers that are currently coming in for a host of different reasons, and then the OG group who actually homeschooled millennials. And I'm about the youngest millennial you'll get, but there's a different, there was a different culture, literally a different curriculums it's just a totally different generation in that you used to be able to order paper curriculums. You have to wait for them in the mail. And now everything is online, everything is accessible and searchable. It's a wonderful time to be a homeschool parent, actually. But my mom homeschooled myself and my three siblings and up until high school, just about. And so I went into high school and I had kind of a rocky experience in that I got into a chartered art school for drawing and painting, ended up not really liking that meshing with the school itself. And so I went to a couple different high schools actually, and then ended up with a really good small school. My mom worked as a school nurse so that we could get reduced tuition to go to this little small private school. And I had a soccer coach at this school who told me in my sophomore year of high school, he said that you're bored. It's time you leave here. He said, go dual enroll. And I ended up dual enrolling full time at a local university in Savannah, Georgia, where I grew up. And during that time, I went to the university, like I said, full time. So I was on campus full time, got in at 16. So at 17 years old, I was full time in college. Ended up not doing well there for a host of reasons. The main reason was because academia is not very friendly to people who question or ask questions or are inquisitive in general. And when I asked why to things, that was an unwelcome question in what I had always been told was going to be this open-minded exploration of the world, teaching dynamic thinking, teaching critical thinking. That's the thing that you hear over and over. Instead of that, I found quite the opposite, which is that a lot of the professors were extremely narrow-minded. There was not a lot of discourse. There was not a lot of it was not welcoming of different viewpoints or opinions. The only place that I did find it on campus was I took an opinion piece that I had done for my economics class that I had been failed on because my professor did not like my opinion, even though it was an opinion piece. And I took this piece of writing to the paper on campus, and the editor ended up taking a liking to my writing, and so he paid me to write a column. So I ended up being the youngest paid columnist ever for this university, but I ended up leaving and breaking out of college about 9 months after that. Um, and that experience, I remember very clearly the day that I left. It was a really beautiful day, and I went out into the quad, which was right outside the library, and I just sat there and I watched the sky, and I just went, I don't want to be here. And then I had to go back into a sociology midterm, and I sat down and I looked at the sociology midterm, and the first question, I just couldn't bring myself to answer it. So I tore it in half. I threw it in the trash. I went to the library. I stole a book. I've since paid it. I've since paid for it. And I left college and I never went back. And now I run Degree Free. So after I left school, I ended up in a host of different careers. I worked as a deckhand on a dolphin boat. I did sales. I worked as a nanny. I worked for restaurants. I did all kinds of different things. I worked for a nonprofit for a while in fundraising, a little bit as an investigative journalist. And then I ended up retooling into AI about 5 years ago. This would have been during COVID. And I worked in AI and machine learning, again, without buying a college degree. And while there, I ended up seeing the shift that was going to occur because of all of the new technology coming on the scene, in combination with the fact that degree requirements in general had already been on the decline since 2014. And so I just saw this storm coming, and I knew that parents were going to be looking for a way to help their kids navigate the changing job market, and also the changing education market, because those are two very separate needs, two very separate things. And that is how we started Degree Free.
Wow. Okay, that's an interesting backstory. So I had not heard that before. So let's first talk about parents, because I know this is very emotional about like what your kids are going to choose to do. And we all kind of think like, well, you have to do college. So like, how do most parents react when their kids consider a degree-free path? And then like, do you have advice for them if their kids want to make like an informed decision that might not include college? How can we handle those emotions, the reactions? How do we best support our kids that way?
Oh, what a good question. So there's two sides to this. One is the parent side, and one is the young adult side. And I think that's really important to note about this is that young adults are and what's typically called college age adults. But I hate that term because it means that the colleges own them when they do not. So we're just going to call it young adults because it's a transitional age from about 16 to 20 years old. There's a lot of forgiveness in society for kids finding their way because they're still young, they're still very inexperienced, and allowing them a lot of leeway to entry level jobs, to entry level learning, and to making mistakes. So, the biggest thing I think for parents with this is trying to detach emotion and status from college as much as humanly possible, simply because it's no longer valid. And that's something that I think is really tough for older generations. I think for Gen X, that's a really, really tough thing because their parents really drilled into them that college was the way to change social classes. College was the way to get good jobs. College was the only way to be educated. And while those things may have been true in the context that they were told those things, that Gen X was taught those things, that's just not the reality of it anymore. And, due to a lot of historical background too, and I can go into this for the parents, but basically, it's never been college. It's always been the jobs, and then it's always been the people who are choosing to go into certain jobs that make college degrees look like they are responsible for people getting into different social classes or for people getting into different levels of jobs that are professionally tied to legal licenses that are barred by degrees. And those are not the same things. And because we've conflated them, now people just think, oh, if you go to college and you get a bachelor's or a master's, it's going to increase the amount that you earn. Your life is going to go better. Your outcomes are going to go better. But if you think about it, a lot of the reason that this has been hidden so well for so long and the colleges have been able to get away with poor outcomes is because they choose the kids they let in. So it's kind of like saying, oh, wow, like, everybody, I don't know what it is with all of these guys that are just like so fast and so athletic, and you're standing on a football field where they're doing the first round pick of the NFL draft. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, they're seeing if they can fit the test that they are optimizing for, so they can choose who they let in, so they can measure the success of those people. So they're white labeling people who are likely to succeed on the metrics that they are measuring. And so that's something that once parents realize that a lot of that is just it's just filtering bias. And so getting a college degree and buying a degree is not going to guarantee that your child is financially successful. And so unhooking that I need my child to go to college because I need other people to think that they're going to be successful or I need to feel that is the first step. And I know that's hard for homeschooling parents, especially because it was hard for my mom. My mom pushed me to go to college. My mom, even though she was a homeschool mom, she had spent all that time educating my siblings and I outside of the system, and then just to turn around and push me right back into it. And this is something I spoke at the Texas Homeschool Convention, and I spoke at the Florida Homeschool conference earlier this year, and I said this stat, which is really important, but 74% of homeschool parents push their kids into college. And there is no way that 74% of those kids need to be in college because very few jobs legally require college degrees. It's only 7.7%. And of those jobs, not all of them are going to have positive ROI. And even more important than that, just because kids are going to college and they're going to get a job, they're going to get a degree that may get them a legal license, does not mean that parents have thought through with their kids what their kids need out of their work. So just because a child is going to medical school because they have the ability to get the grades to become a doctor does not mean that becoming a doctor or becoming a surgeon is the best fit for the life that they want to live. And that's something that's really tough for parents too, is they're already too far down the road. It's are they, where are they going to college? What are they going to college for? Not do they need to go? And then is this the best way for them to get the life that they actually want? And once you back up, once you zoom out and you go, okay, let's just not buy into the college hype because we're trying to justify and this is something I think for homeschooling parents is really key. It is not worth it to try to justify or measure your success as a parent and as a homeschool parent by what college your kids gets into or what degrees your kids get. And Abby, I'm sure you've seen this with people. Oh, my child's homeschool parents love to do this. I think they love to do it even more than parents who are part of traditional school models because they need other people to see that they did a good job. But the fact is, if you homeschooled your kids, you already did a good job. You already did it, and you've already equipped your child. Homeschoolers demolish all other kids. They demolish all other kids. You've already done the thing that is going to make your child successful. Now what you have to do is make sure you don't push them into something that undoes all of the education that you did and undoes all of the future that you've built for them by putting them in debt immediately. Because all you have to do to put your child ahead of 50% of the US population is not put them in student loan debt. Don't put them in debt. Also, something homeschool parents really need to know is that if your child just waits until they're 25 or 26 and they fill out that FAFSA, it will no longer be tied to your income. And so your child can end up going to school, one, when they're sure of what they need to get a degree for, if they need one at all. Two, they'll be able to pay for it, or you might in cash. That's a wild thought. Three, the aid that they will get, if they're going to get loans for it, the cost will just shoot through the floor because it's no longer trying to pull money out of your pocket, pull money out of grandparents' pockets. It's just trying to, they're measuring based on the young adult's income, which is going to be entry level at 25 years old.
Mm-hmm. Let's switch to the teenagers. And you kind of, alluded to this of like when you're young, you don't really know the path that you want to go sometimes. So you feel pressure to follow a path and you're not sure you want to go down there, but you kind of feel the pressure. But, so why do many kids blindly choose college just as a next step? And like, do they really know what they want to do? Are they drawn to it for social reasons? Do you think? Why are they wanting to go without having a real reason?
That's such a good question because the thing is, a lot of Gen Z and Gen Alpha don't want to go to college. They actively don't want to go. The reason they do go is because they don't know what else to do. That's
Hmm.
also the reason that a lot of parents send their kids, is because they view college as this well-lit path, and they view not going into debt as a dark path because they're not sure exactly what steps their child is going to take in order to be successful on the path that is not well lit. That's the only difference. Another reason is because it's kind of artificial. If you look at the way that colleges are set up, and this all goes back to the history of student loans in the United States, but in 1965, the government passed the Higher Education Act. And essentially, what this did was after World War II, a bunch of GIs came back and they had the GI Bill. And at that time, a lot of GIs coming back went to school for things like law and medicine and civil engineering and architecture, things that are tied to legal licensure. And
Hmm.
so colleges experience what's called the GI bulge, which is there was an inflow of money from all of these groups, and it was completely artificial. There was not that amount of demand for college graduates. And when they did that, as soon as the resulting cash flow from the GI bulge started to go downhill, the colleges basically got the government to start subsidizing student loans in 1965. And the result of that was the Higher Education Act. By 1976, the Higher Education Act had to be amended in order to fix the default rate because it went from 2% to 9%. And the amount of people that had degrees doubled in that 10-year period. And the ROI on degrees at that point had almost run out. So into the 1980s, probably like mid 1980s was the last time that most college degrees actually had positive ROI simply because of the degree. But what happened was that caused this very easy pathway. It's fake. There's government money that allows people to buy things that they cannot afford or would not buy otherwise. So a lot of it is economic incentive. Like it's easy to sign up for those loans, and the loans are they're deceptive. They're deceptively simple to get. They are impossible to get out of. And so the path has been made very smooth for 17 and 18-year-olds and their families to, in this period of unsurety, with social pressure pushing them off of a cliff, is what I call it. I call it the college cliff. Like, choose. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? And then schools, and by extension, even homeschoolers are affected by this. But a lot of curriculum or options for career planning that exist funnel kids into the same few jobs. So that's something that we discovered at Degree Free, is that most kids can only name about 6 to 8 jobs. There was recently a survey of, I believe it was 800,000 young adults, so between 14 and 18, and they found that most of them can only name 10 jobs around the globe. So this is a global problem, and it's not necessarily malicious. It's just a lack of what we call vocational creativity. So people don't know what jobs are out there, and you can't walk through a door if you don't know it exists. And so most kids are limited very much in the types of jobs they're exposed to or that are explained to them. And then parents don't really have a good tool that helps them to navigate those things. Even the ones that are currently available are mostly based on the BLS data, which has about 867 jobs in it. But our estimate is that there's closer to 3,000 unique job titles, and more are added every month because technology and the market is always changing. And so it's a very dynamic thing, something that we've solved by personal research and finding exact things in exact markets down to zip code specificity that fit the life that young adults want to live. And so that's how we've solved it. But currently, I believe that we are the only company that solves it in any way that actually needs to be solved. No one solved it because it's difficult, which I
Hmm.
think is the main reason we're the only ones doing it.
Oh, that's very interesting. I have had that thought before of like, yeah, like we don't know a job exists if I don't know someone that has that job. I can't tell my kid about it because I didn't know it existed either. Like that is, yeah, that's such a fascinating point. Are there certain conversations then that we need to have with our kids about their future so that we can figure this out before they get in debt, before they go, to college and they don't need to? Like, are there certain what are those conversations?
Yes. And a lot of this is gonna. I'm about to summarize for you essentially what's in our book, The Degree Free Way. And the Degree Free Way, it's called The Degree Free Way: How to Help Your 16 to 20-year-old Build the Life They Want. And essentially, what it is a collection of 6 exercises that I'm about to talk you through right now. But the core of it, after you help your child figure out how many jobs they actually know, that's their job limit inventory. What do they know about? Because you'll find, and homeschoolers, I will say, tend to have a little bit more than average. So sometimes homeschoolers will get about 12. Still not a lot, but
Mhm.
better than a lot of other kids. But you get about 12 jobs, and then you go, oh, wow, you only know 12 jobs. They can only go into something that they know. They can't go into a job they don't know exists. They can't shoot for something that they're not aware of, that they've never even laid eyes on, heard of,
Mhm.
conceived of. And so once you do that, then you help them figure out um, you have them practice vocational creativity. And that's through services or products or things that they've seen where you basically use the C.S. Lewis method of in the last battle, where he says further up and further in. There's always a job behind a job behind a job, and you can always keep going. And what's going to happen when you do this is you realize there's all these different job families that branch off. It's kind of like a spider web, and they're all interlocking, and you will find that there's different themes of jobs, but it's going to help you explore, oh, well, who gets paid to do that? Okay, well, who does that? So a good example that we use in the book is a flight. So if you get on a plane, there's a lot of jobs that you and I can think of, right? Flight attendant, pilot. Maybe if somebody's a little bit more dynamic, they'll say baggage handler, right? But what you don't think is who repairs the communication systems from the cockpit to the rest of the plane, who preps all the meals that go onto the plane, who sells the contracts for those meals, who services the software that does the ordering for those things. What company is the recruiter for the company that services the software that does the ordering for the plane? You can always keep going. Who does the advertising for the HR company who hires the software developer who works on the software that does the ordering for the plane? So you can always go further up and further into jobs, basically. And that is really helpful for homeschoolers because you have the time, the space, and the energy to practice that. And a lot of homeschool parents are way more tapped into their kids' interests because they facilitate them. And homeschool parents are pros at helping their kids find and go deeper into their interests, very customized to them. And so that's exactly what this is in principle. And once you figure that out, then this is the key. This is the thing that if parents take nothing else away from this episode, it's these four things. Help your child figure out where they want to live and build their life. That's location. Help them figure out how much money they need to make in order to live the life that they want, no matter what life that is. When you have that part of the conversation, do not be judgmental if they say a lot or if they say a little. Just listen. The next thing is going to be schedule. This is good for kids, especially that have specific disabilities or like physical or learning disabilities. This could be for kids that have specific commitments or just are night owls or early risers, and that really impacts their happiness long term. And then the last thing is going to be work environment. So that's who they work around and then where they go in to do their work day in and day out. The one caution with work environment is don't confuse it with industry. So you'll have, for example, one I hear a lot is a lot of young women will say, well, I want to work in healthcare. But that's industry. That's not work environment. Work environment in healthcare would be, I want to work in a clinic that has natural light, and I want to go into work with people that are, doing aesthetics work or light surgical stuff, as opposed to, like, I want to work in healthcare. That can mean anything. Or I want to work in an ambulance, right? So your work environment is an ambulance with another person who you go out into the world and you do your work if you're a paramedic or an EMT.
Mhm.
So that's work environment versus industry. So don't get those two things confused, for parents that are having these discussions. So ask your child very open ended, what do you think you need? And you don't do it in a grilling way. And the most effective way to do this is not at home, not around other siblings, ideally on a car ride. Ideally, if you're out to eat or get coffee or do something that's more fun, and just ask the questions curiously and do not put value statements or judgment to any of the answers. Just listen. And then you start to kind of refine those things a little bit with them over time, but just extract the answers, and then from there you ask them which one's the most important to you. So what we're trying to ascertain is what is the one thing that they need from their work in order to be satisfied with that job or that career. So for some kids, that's going to be location. They don't want to leave their hometown. They want to build their life there. So now their work options are going to be within that zip code or surrounding zip codes. So now you're looking at what's in demand, what can they learn, what's of interest to them within this zip code. And then let's say secondarily, they have a certain income they want to hit. And you say, okay, well, now it's things within the zip code, within this, within this location that make also this amount of money. And now you're looking at a much more refined list from everything in the whole world, right? So you've expanded and then you've brought it back down based on the things that they actually need from their work. And then now once you've done that, then you look at what they need to learn in order to get those jobs. So this becomes very strategic. And we actually don't tell kids not to go to college. We just tell them not to go unless they actually need to go. And if it becomes clear that the most efficient way for your child to get the education or the career training that they need, because education and career training are not the same, then then if it's a community college, send them to community, by all means, send them to community college. If it's a trade program, then send them to trade school if that's something that meets their needs. If it's a software development program that's remote that has a job guarantee attached to it, do that. And the one thing I want to caution homeschool parents against that I've seen a lot lately, and I think this is just because I think a lot of this is just because there's a general pushback towards college for a lot of different reasons. ROI is the number one. People can't reconcile the money for the outcome, which is high time that people were evaluating it that way because colleges have placed that on themselves and then failed it. The second thing is education. They're not educating people. They're not coming out thinking critically. A lot of them barely read. Quite literally, that's a huge problem that they're having specifically at Ivy Leagues. If anybody does research into this, they're not educating people. They're not teaching them to be well-rounded, educated individuals and members of society. And that's if you're not educating people and you're not training them for careers, and those are your two things that you say that you do, and you fail at both of them, you can't charge $100,000 a year without people questioning you. They're going to stop sending their kids. But what parents want is they want to be sure. They want to be sure of whatever they put their kids into. And so they send them now what's happening, and I think this is going to have a bad outcome, is they're sending them to trade schools because they think, oh, well, if not college, then trade school. And it's very socially acceptable and hip to say this. But the problem with sending your kids to trade school instead of sending them to college is that trade school is still college. It's still student loan debt. It's still sending your kids into a career and a training program without thinking of whether or not that meets their needs. And this is not because there's no value statement on any of the careers or jobs they choose. If your child wants to be a sociologist or a licensed clinical social worker, they're going to have to go to college to get a license to do that job. And they should only do that if it meets their needs. If your child is going to own a plumbing business, they should only go to trade school because it's the best available option. There's no apprenticeships where you are. There's no on the job training where you are. And they're only going to do that because it meets their needs. It's going to meet their income. They want to own their own business and control their work environment. Sending your kids into trade school because it's not college is equally as bad as sending them to college because you're going to get the debt is functions the same. It's still bankruptcy exempt. It's still through the exact same models. People are choosing it now because they view it as a slightly less risky, laid out, well lit path.
Oh, that's very helpful. I haven't heard that point before about trade schools, but then you said it perfectly. That's really interesting, and we'll have to think through that. That's really good. So, can we get practical? Like as homeschool moms, we can like you said, we can have a customized high school for our kids. Like we can do whatever we need to do to set them up for success. Are there certain skills that you think we should be focusing on? Does that change depending on if they're going to college versus trade school versus internship versus, starting a business? Like, are there certain skills that maybe are important no matter what? What should we be focusing on?
Oh, that is a really good question because this is one that everyone's asking. Because what people are really asking is what skills are going to survive this next technological leap. And the answer is really simple. And I spoke at both of the conferences about this, but the first one's critical thinking, like being able to look at things and think strategically and think critically. The second thing is going to be public speaking. If your kids can speak in public, they're going to conquer the world. People cannot. The number one gripe that employers have right now, and 90% of employers are saying that they're going to avoid hiring recent college graduates. One of the number one things they say is they cannot speak and they cannot look people in the eyes. If your child can look people in the eyes and can speak clearly, they will conquer the world.
Hmm.
It is that simple. Critical thinking, public speaking, and then the last thing I would say would be like, the last thing I would say is probably writing, just writing clearly, which kind of I almost hesitate to say that as its own category because it's very tied into critical thinking and speaking clearly. Usually, if you can speak clearly, you can also write clearly, but being able to write because the world that we're entering does not require people to be able to code, necessarily. The vast majority of people will not need to code. We're still going to have coders. And actually, I think that the decline in software developers is very temporary. It's while the industry adjusts to AI and how it's being used. And I believe it's going to spike again. There's going to be a lot of demand for cybersecurity and software development. But in the meantime, uh, while people don't need to learn to code, they do need to learn to give clear dictations and clear instructions to the robots, for lack of a better, and the robots being all of AI. But one of the fathers of AI has said, like, the coding language of the future is English. You write, give directions, see what output you can get. And then being able to write clearly, be creative, and think critically and speak clearly are the things that your children, because they're not in school all day, can get really good at. Small
Mm-hmm.
business chamber of commerce where you live. Toast. All day, I will say this till I'm blue in the face. They're all over the country. There's a toast. You can throw a rock and hit a Toastmasters group. In that group will be professionals who are trying to hone their public speaking skills. They will all be older than your kids, and they will bend over backwards to help, to give connection, and to encourage them because they're the only young person there. Use it. Use that. And encourage your kids to go places where everybody's not the same age as them.
That's a great suggestion. Do you have a really quick story or example you can tell us as we wrap up? Because it's very inspiring to hear like a real life example of someone who didn't do the traditional route. They did some alternative path and they really made a great life for themselves. Do you have a little story you can share?
Yeah, I have a couple. I have two. Well, one is one of my favorites is actually a young man who just came through our launch program. He was working with a career strategist, and it looks very much like his path is of the ones he chose. He's going to go to an apprenticeship for Formula One racing to become a race engineer, and this is a program in Barcelona in Spain. And one of the things that we do is we do planning wherever it is. So it doesn't matter what the young adult ends up wanting to do, we can find a way for them to do it. That's what we do. And so what's cool about that is that they apprentice far younger in the UK and in Europe than they do here. And so even though he's just 16, just about to turn 17, he's going to be able to go and be fully trained by the time he's 18 years old, which is unbelievable because in the United States he'd have to wait until he's about 18. So that's one of my favorites of under 18. I would say that over 18, my favorite is a young man who dropped out of, and we actually don't say dropped out, we say broke out because he did. He broke out of Texas A&M engineering program, and he ended up coming home, was kind of floundering, not sure what to do, thought about all kinds of stuff, thought about backpacking the Appalachian Trail, thought about just anything to find some purpose and meaning. And his parents ended up putting him through the launch program, and then after that we found him. This is one of my favorite stories because of how fast this happened. But typically our program takes about 4 weeks to complete, and 3.5 weeks in, we found him because he was still really interested in engineering, good at stats, good at math. The academics, the actual math wasn't the problem for him with the program. It was just that he didn't like learning on a college campus because it wasn't teaching him very much. And he ended up going into MRI and X-ray repair technician work, so field engineering for that, which is a huge field, pays extremely well. And his only experience before that was working at a snow cone place. And then he ended up getting paid on the job training for a job that's going to make him what he wants to make, allow him to buy a home, and propose to his girlfriend, a lot sooner than he would have been able to. And so that's my favorite because what I see there and what we're trying to do at Degree Free is have real generational impact. I'm sick and tired of people, like, seeing people delay their lives, not have kids, not buy homes, and just delay adulthood until it's too late for them to get the things that they actually wanted. And we are moving that needle by helping them find work because it's a tool for them to live the lives that they want. And that's my favorite story of the last, like, 30 days.
This has been very empowering. I love this, Hannah. This really gives us a lot to think about. So we appreciate you. Thank you for your time. Where can people find you online?
So they can find us at degreefree.com. If you want to listen to our podcast, degreefree.com/podcast. We've been on a hiatus for about 3 months while we push some really big projects through at our company, and we've been growing our company as well. So we've been hiring quite a few people recently. And then degreefree.com/podcast. We're on YouTube. And then like I said, my book is our book is The Degree Free Way: How to Help Your 16 to 20-year-old Build the Life They Want. And that you can find on our website too, degreefree.com/book.
Awesome. Thanks, Hannah.
Thank you so much, Abby.
Thanks for joining us today. Be sure to check out the show notes at 41more.com/332 and check out Degree Free at degreefree.com. We'll see you next week for another episode of the Homeschool with Moxie podcast. Happy homeschooling.